Okay, so you want to own a KFC. Good news, there are more than 28,000 KFC restaurants in over 150 countries right now, making it one of the largest restaurant chains on earth. The brand is instantly recognizable. The bucket, the beard, a menu customers have known since before they could drive. Chicken is one of the few proteins nobody's scared of. It sounds like a guaranteed win. It isn't. Not unless you already have more money sitting in the bank than most people make in 15 years. Before we even get to the numbers, here's the part nobody tells you. You can't actually buy in. Not without qualifying first. To be considered as a KFC franchisee, Yum Brands requires a minimum net worth of $1.5 million and at least $750,000 in liquid capital. Cash or assets you could convert within about 10 business days. Prior food service or multi-unit management experience is strongly preferred, even where it's not strictly mandatory. That's the first filter. Most people watching this video are already out, not because the business is bad, but because the door has a keypad on it and the code costs $1.5 million. By the end of this video, you'll understand why a company that looks like the easiest bet in fast food actually pushes almost all of its real profit toward the operators who already own hundreds of units. Why financing this thing the normal way can put you underwater before you've sold a single drumstick. And why the same brand exploding overseas has spent most of the last decade quietly struggling in its own backyard. So you clear the qualification bar. Now what does it actually cost to open the doors? For a newly constructed KFC, the total initial investment runs $1.85 million to $3.77 million, according to the brand's most recent franchise disclosure document. That covers land, construction, kitchen equipment, signage, and opening inventory. Buying into a remodel or reopened location is cheaper, $1.05 million to $2.52 million. But you're inheriting someone else's building instead of designing your own. On top of that, a $45,000 initial franchise fee split into a $20,000 deposit and a $25,000 option fee. Want multiple units instead of one? Development rights for 3 to 12 outlets run another $135,000 to $540,000, since Yum Brands actively prefers franchisees who commit to more than one restaurant from day one. Add it up and you're in for well over $1 million before you've fried a single piece of chicken. And that's assuming the construction budget holds, which it rarely does. Here's the part that mirrors every franchise on earth. The day your doors open, Yum Brands starts taking its cut, whether you turned a profit that month or not. You'll pay a royalty of 4 to 5% of gross sales, plus a national advertising contribution of 4.5 to 5%, roughly 10% of every dollar that crosses the counter, gone before you've paid for a single chicken thigh, an employee's shift, or the electricity bill. The percentage doesn't care if the week was slow. Compare that to opening an independent fried chicken restaurant with no brand fees at all. You'd keep that 10%. What you'd be giving up in exchange is the supply chain, the national ad campaigns, the proven playbook, and a first-year failure rate industry sources put below 1%. That trade-off is franchising in one sentence. You're renting certainty. Now here's the part almost nobody talks about, because it doesn't show up until you actually try to buy one. How you pay for it changes everything. Most people don't walk in with $2 million in cash. They borrow it, usually through an SBA-backed loan. And here's where the math gets brutal. Take a mid-sized KFC, doing something close to the median in annual revenue, running around a 15% margin before debt payments. That's roughly $130,000 a year in cash flow before you owe the bank anything. Now finance even a modest $1.5 million of that purchase through a typical SBA loan, and depending on the rate and the term, your annual debt payment alone can run well past $200,000 a year. Read that again. The restaurant generates less cash than the loan costs to service. On paper, you own a business. In practice, you're paying to keep the lights on while the bank collects first. Lenders know this, which is exactly why they underwrite so cautiously. They want 2+ years of experience, strong personal credit, and often a down payment in the range of 10 to 20% in cash before they'll even talk to you. The units that actually cash flow comfortably after debt service tend to be the higher volume ones, not the median ones, which quietly rules out a huge share of the restaurants you could otherwise afford to buy. So what's actually left over for the restaurants that do work? The average KFC in the US pulls in somewhere around $1.6 million a year in revenue. Respectable, but well behind McDonald's roughly $4 million average, and behind some of the newer chicken chains nipping at KFC's heels. Chains like Wingstop, Zaxby's, Bojangles, and El Pollo Loco are already clearing $2 million a year per location. and newer entrants like Dave's Hot Chicken and Pollo Campero are pushing past 3 million. KFC, along with Popeyes and Church's, sits in a lower tier. Solid, established, but no longer the top of the food chain it once was. After royalties, food costs, labor, and rent or debt service, net margins for a well-run KFC typically land around 6 to 10%. On $1.6 million in sales, that's roughly $95,000 to $160,000 a year in actual profit for the owner. Now put that next to the investment number. You put up $1.85 million to $3.77 million, and if everything goes well, no debt problems, no bad year, no slow-to-recover market, you're clearing well under $200,000 a year. Industry estimates put the real payback period at 10 to 20 years. This isn't a business you flip in year 3. It's a business you hand down to your kids. So if one KFC barely moves the needle, what actually builds wealth here? Owning more than one. This is where KFC quietly stops looking like a restaurant business and starts looking like a roll-up. The largest KFC franchisee in America, KBP Brands, didn't get there by opening one perfect location. They got there by buying out legacy operators, region by region, stacking hundreds of restaurants under one management structure, with buying power, marketing muscle, and operational systems no solo owner could match. Today, KBP operates more than 1,100 restaurants across KFC, Taco Bell, Arby's, and Sonic combined. That's the actual model. A single KFC is a demanding income. 100 KFCs, run by an operator who's already solved the labor, supply chain, and real estate problems at scale, is a business empire. Most people watching this video aren't opening one KFC as a side hustle. They're either building toward that scale, or they're the small piece someone bigger eventually buys out. And that leads to the part that doesn't show up in any brochure. Legacy independent owners are being quietly squeezed out of their own franchise system. KFC's franchisee base has been openly described by a major operator's own CEO as, quote, ripe for consolidation. Translation, a wave of longtime KFC owners, some who've run their restaurants since the 1960s, are approaching retirement with no succession plan, and large, well-capitalized operators are buying them out at a pace that keeps accelerating. Sign on as a small, single-unit franchisee today, and you're not just competing with Popeyes and Chick-fil-A down the street. You're competing for food costs, labor, and negotiating leverage against operators dozens of times your size, inside the very same brand. The franchise agreement itself carries structural risk that's easy to miss before signing. Terms have historically run around 20 years, and franchisees are not guaranteed an exclusive territory. Rands can approve another KFC near yours if the market supports it. Go overseas and the risk sharpens further. In early 2025, KFC's Turkish franchise operator filed for bankruptcy after Yum Brands severed ties over standards violations, triggering hundreds of closures and putting thousands of jobs on the line almost overnight. The brand survives. The franchisee sometimes doesn't. There's a fourth wrinkle, and it's the one that shows up over years, not a single balance sheet. While KFC has been opening close to 3,000 new restaurants a year worldwide, more than its entire US footprint in just over 12 months, the domestic chain spent most of the past decade with flat or negative same-store sales. It wasn't until late 2025 that US same-store sales finally turned positive again, posting 2% growth in a single quarter, the first gain in 2 years. That's actually a notable moment, because the broader fast food market was tough at the time, and a direct competitor, Popeyes, reported a same-store sales decline in that same period. Meanwhile, newer chicken concepts are posting average unit volumes north of $3 million, nearly double what a typical KFC location brings in. The brand you'd be buying isn't the brand from 1995, or even 2015. It's a company mid-turnaround, leaning on overseas growth while trying to convince a new generation of American customers to come back. KFC isn't going anywhere. The bucket, the beard, the smell of fried chicken on a Tuesday night, that's cultural infrastructure at this point, and the international numbers back it up. But the business you'd actually be buying into isn't a turnkey cash machine. It's a $2 to $4 million entry ticket, gated behind a $1.5 million net worth requirement, financed in a way that can leave you cash flow negative before you've served your first customer, taxed roughly 10% off the top before you've spent $1 on chicken, and competing against consolidators dozens of times your size for the same real estate and the same labor pool, inside a domestic market that's only just started to recover after years of losing ground. Own one, and you've bought a demanding, decent-paying job with someone else's name on the sign. Own 100, and you've bought a business. You decide.